Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you tonight. Our telephone number, if you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, I welcome you to do so, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez, and you can feel free to call at any time. It's the Friday edition, so we're going to let our hair down a little bit tonight. But there are some hard news, some breaking news that we'll get to and we'll react to and discuss. The first one I want to talk about is this serial killer coming out of Long Island, New York, an architect who was tracked down by way of his DNA was caught. They caught him originally on 3 of these killings in the Gilgo Beach serial killings. I don't know if I'm saying Gilgo right, but anyway, I'm not from Long Island. So let's listen to what the DA had to say. Check this out.
He's been arrested by the Suffolk County Police Department's homicide detectives, and he's been indicted in a grand jury presentation by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office for the murders of Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello.
Now, what's interesting here is this guy, this architect that they've caught. Let me see, what's his name? Thurman? I don't know if I'm saying that right. I should be better prepared for this stuff. Heuermann. Heuermann? H-E-U-E-R-M-A-N-N. Heuermann. I'm going to go with Heuermann. Anyway, Mr. Heuermann, he was doing Google searches, including, why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? Isn't that funny? I know some people will Google themselves to see what, a potential date. If you didn't know, it's a commonplace thing now for women to Google you. If you're going on a date, they want to know who you are. And they Google you. And it's interesting to me that this guy was Googling, why haven't they caught him yet when he was the actual serial killer? But the DA goes on to talk about how they knew that he'd be paying attention to media reports on the case. Listen to this.
These young women went missing between July of 2007 and September of 2010. They were found in December of 2010 by the Suffolk County Police Department, and then there was nothing, absolutely nothing. For the next 13 years, their cases went unsolved. We were very careful how we handled the investigation. We maintained the integrity of the investigation. Most importantly of all, we maintained the secrecy of that investigation, and I think that's paid dividends as we've seen today.
Again, that's District Attorney Ray Tierney from the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. So they've caught this guy, and again, interesting story because it had gone on for quite a long time, and people didn't know what was going on. They weren't sure, these things going back to 2010, 2011, right? There was even a movie on this, a Netflix movie in 2020 called Lost Girls. And I think this is what many of us think happens when little kids or whatever just disappear. But there's more to it, right? There are now thousands, right? 85,000 to be exact. There's 85,000 kids that are missing as of, a month ago, 2 months ago. In April, they had a hearing, and one of the whistleblowers from the Department of Health and Human Services said there was 85,000 kids missing that were in their custody, in their care, that had come as unaccompanied minors coming across the border. And, of course, this situation is not related to illegal immigration, but it goes to show you how the United States, and these are the words she used, the United States is the middleman on what is probably the largest human smuggling operation ever on this planet. And it's happening right here at our southern border. And Joe El Baboso Biden, the president of the United States, is at the helm of it, or at least complicit in it, if the cartel is at the helm of it, playing dumb and creating conditions through policy where they can continue to smuggle whatever they want. In this situation, they're smuggling drugs and children. And it's just, it blows me away. And, you know, when you have these localized cases of kidnapping and murder and whatnot, it's scary on a different level, right? Because there's a boogeyman, there's this Uriman person, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his last name, and I'm glad that I am. But it's just an interesting phenomena that we kind of look at the border situation as something that's like, oh, well, that's over there. But it's not necessarily what it is, right? People, there really is a big deal of people or children that go missing and whatnot, young girls in particular, and young boys, right? There was a trafficking report we talked about a week and a half ago, and said that actually the number of missing young boys is on the rise. So I mean, there's a lot to look out for. Anyway, this guy's name, Rex Uerman, his mugshot's been released. Kind of looks like a washed up professional wrestler, you know, like one of those guys that never really had a huge wrestling career, but you know, eventually, had a decent run at a character and wrestling, and then just got out of it. He doesn't, that's who he looks like to me. Looks like he's missing a trucker cap. Wondering if he has all his teeth or not. But it says he's an architect. Anyway, I want to talk about that. I also wanted to talk about something that was a little one-off, but I will double check and try and make a connection here. But I just saw this and I said, man, if I don't get to it now, when will I get to it? Maybe we could get to it in hour number 3. But listen to this. This is a very interesting article. Houston health officials are reporting syphilis, an outbreak that's 128% spike in cases amongst women. Crazy, right? This STD is all over the place. Houston health officials have warned that this 128% spike is nothing to be laughed at. Statistics from the new infections rose by 57% from 1,845 individuals in 2019 to nearly 3,000 in 2022. The number of cases among women totaled 674 last year, and that's up nearly 300 cases, 295 cases from 2019. Now, I think you're thinking what I'm thinking. How the heck is that happening? Like, what is going on that all of a sudden there's all this new syphilis? And I don't know that they have an answer. The CDC is working with the health officials, and they're launching a rapid outreach response to the issue. But they're saying they're going to go to hotspots and curb community partners, mobilizing community partners to curb new infections. Excuse me, I read that wrong. And I'm just thinking, there's got to be a little bit more to this story that we're not being told or that we don't know yet. So as we learn more, I'll let you know. But go figure, right? Of all places, Houston, Texas, and of all things, syphilis, right? Now, syphilis, if I'm not mistaken, I learned this when I worked in the state government. Syphilis is like the number one STD for senior citizens. I had no idea that there's actually like a very high number in most senior citizens' homes and whatever, because apparently you can get it in your younger days and it's dormant for a long time, and it comes out in your older years, and it manifests as kind of like dementia does, right? Similar symptoms, like altered mental status and stuff like that. And I didn't know about that until I attended a meeting and I heard that. And I said, oh, my gosh, what are these old people doing in these nursing homes to get syphilis? Then I learned it was a dormant thing. But anyway, I wanted to bring that up just to put it out there. And we'll circle back and get an update on that report in hour number 3. But I want to talk about some news that came out today that Joe Biden might not be the nominee. The Democrats might be secretly working behind the scenes to get rid of him. So we're going to talk about that as well as a bunch of other things. We've got a lot of people lined up tonight, so I think you're going to really enjoy the show. Make sure you pull up a chair, sit back, relax, enjoy it. We're here for 3 hours, keeping you company till 1 a.m. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez, keeping you company straight till 1 a.m. this evening on the East Coast, if you're on the West Coast, and it's 3 hours earlier. Anyway, welcome to the show. Again, our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And this morning, I got an email that said that veteran journalist, and you know this guy because he's been on this program before, journalist, author, former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, former senior editor at the Weekly Standard, Lee Smith. And if you don't remember the name, Lee Smith, just always remember, he's the other Puerto Rican conservative. That's right, Lee Smith, born in Puerto Rico. And I saw an email that said he was doing this call or a live stream discussing what has recently been revealed about Democrats working behind the scenes to potentially find a replacement for Joe Biden. And I find that interesting because, every day when I see Joe Biden doing what he does, I think, my goodness, is this really their guy? But then I go, well, who else do they got? Kamala Harris? Oh, boy. Yeah, I'd probably pick Joe, too. Then you've got Gavin Newsom. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about it as a conservative and I'm biased. But it doesn't seem like there's a really good bench out there. And probably the most viable one would be the shirtless push-up king, RFK Jr. But even him, I think he doesn't seem to have much gravitas amongst Democrats. So I said, you know what? We've got to connect with Lee Smith and find out what's going on here, because I know that there were some folks on CNN and they were saying, well, we don't know, and we conditions of anonymity, can't say who and what and where, but people are thinking and people are talking and saying that Gavin Newsom might be a reliable alternative. Lee Smith, welcome, sir.
Rich, thank you so much for the great introduction. I really appreciate it. And nice to be with you tonight. With your
Go right ahead.
Well, I mean, the live stream we did this morning at Locals, and I hope your great audience will check out my Locals community, leesmith.locals.com. I actually made the case that I think you're making. I don't think they're going to go for another option. I think all the problems that people have identified with Joe Biden now were known in 2020. And it's funny that this comes up because a couple of friends were just texting me saying, Lee, I think you're crazy. There's no way they can run Biden. Look at this video of him, basically making some weird motion on this little Finnish girl when during his recent tour. I'm like, yeah, I know it's really weird and twisted, but the guy's been doing this for decades, right? And he does it in public. This guy, and unfortunately what this says about anyone who does that is weird, right? But the fact he does it in public and basically dares people to say anything about it, and of course the Democratic Party media institutions are not, and senior party officials are not. So no, I don't. I mean, he was on the way down. He was sunsetting in 2020. That's why they kept him in the basement. So everything Joe Biden has done, Joe Biden has checked off. Also, he's checked off major items on the progressive faction's wish list, right? Open borders, trillions earmarked for climate change agenda, climate change infrastructure stuff. So, no, I think that the party bosses must be extremely happy with Joe Biden, And also it sends an important message. And this was the message it sent in 2022. It's like, you can't do anything about it. We can run a guy who's basically not there, and we can get him, we can push him into the White House, and you can complain about it, and you can say whatever you want about the vote. You can say anything you want about ballot harvesting. You can say anything you want about fraud. But you know what? It doesn't matter. We can push a guy into the White House who looks like this, and you can't do a thing about it. And the important thing, I think, to remember about Biden is, having spent so much time in Washington, it's not just about Joe Biden. The CIA and the FBI are not protecting the Biden family because they love Joe Biden. It's because their institutional and personal interests intersect with Joe Biden. So again, it's depressing. It's depressing, but it says that we're at a very strange time in American history. At a normal time, you would see Democratic Party consultants saying like, hey, the president, I don't know, it seems to have happened all of a sudden, but the president's not in good shape, and we have to come up with options for 2024 if we want to stay in the White House. But that's clearly not what they're doing, because what's their main plan? Their main plan is, so what else do you have to destroy Donald Trump? Do we have any other legal cases out there? What else do we have out there? Hey, let's bring back E. Jean Carroll, right, in January. How about that? Got that, E. Jean Carroll. So it's it speaks to a dark moment in our history.
You know, Lee Smith, I was thinking about this. I think about it often in arguments that I have with people, especially like my Cuban buddy who makes my coffee in the morning, and he oftentimes makes the case of why he believes Biden will easily be reelected, and I have to say he makes some interesting points. Right. Yesterday or 2 days ago, we were talking about it, and I said these are relevant points. So I'm gonna agree with you while playing devil's advocate. And while I do think that ultimately this is or at least it seems to me like this is going to be a Trump-Biden matchup. He makes the case that it's a Trump-Biden matchup, but Biden takes it because there won't be any major change, right? And even though his numbers don't look good, he's able to skate by with those numbers, and inflation continues to go down. So as long as that goes down, the stock market doesn't plummet. Maybe it even rallies between now and an election time. These things only help him. He also said, we haven't even seen the chip manufacturing bill that the Democrats put out there. Once that happens, then, the things in the car market ease up and cool off a little bit, and used cars cost what used cars should actually cost, and new cars are available again. That abundant supply will bring down the demand, and it'll make inflation feel a lot better for people. He also said, I think people are used to paying a lot more for food, and they're going to continue paying a lot more for food. And as it trickles down, he'll just say for 8 months in a row, we've had lower inflation and we're doing great. And I feel like people might actually go for that. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting argument. Here's where I would push back on that.
Lee, hold that thought. The clock beat me to it. So let me just remind everybody, we're on with Lee Smith at Lee Smith DC. If you want to follow him on Twitter, I do. He's an excellent guy to follow. And we're going to continue with our conversation with Lee Smith straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. It's America at Night with me, Rich Valdez, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Lee Smith is our guest. He's the veteran journalist and author of several books. The last one was even a movie. You got to check that out. Former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, former senior editor at the Weekly Standard, and you definitely want to check out his locals page, leesmith.locals.com. Now, we're talking about party bosses, and will they replace Biden? I made a pro-Biden case before the break. Lee Smith, you were responding.
No, I mean, you're a Cuban friend, as much as Puerto Rican guys like you and me might regret having to say so. But your Cuban friend made a really excellent point, and he makes it pretty strong. I would say really the most important. Well, first of all, is he talking about the CHIPS Act, referring to the semiconductor chips?
Yeah.
Is that what he's talking about? I think there are
he's talking about that. And he also said, when you throw in a little bit of a release of some barrels from the reserve just to bring down gas prices, to make a perfect storm of looking like it's a great win for everybody, so he can refer to it in his speech saying, look, gas is $2.99, blah, 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 and boom, there you go.
And that all makes sense. And so without having to go into too many details, I'd say here's one really interesting point. And that is, they're obviously terrified of Donald Trump. And how do we know? Because they will not relent. Because they keep going after Donald Trump. There's going to be another DOJ indictment, I assume, related to January 6 charges. I imagine there's going to be indictments in Fulton County, Georgia as well. They will not give up. They will not let Trump rest. And so what does that mean? I mean, that tells me, look, I mean, you and I speak to people very knowledgeable about polling and stuff like that. And I'm really impressed to hear people say, oh, yeah, absolutely, there's a path to victory for Donald Trump. And, a lot of us coming out of 2022, looking at the layout of the country, especially, states controlled by Democrats, is like, what kind of path to victory is there for a Republican? But people who know a lot more about it than me say, oh, no, definitely there's path to victory for Donald Trump, maybe even other Republicans as well. And so that tells me that the Democratic Party themselves are worried about Donald Trump. Again, if it was a normal political moment, what would be happening? The party bosses would be saying, Joe just lost it. He's off. He was off a couple of beats in 2020, but now he's just off too many beats. There's just no way for him to catch up. So we got to think about rotating. I don't know who, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, just said Andrew Cuomo. Let's rehabilitate Andrew Cuomo, for Pete's sake. Who knows what they would have done? But that's not what they're doing. What are they doing? They're redoubling their focus to destroy Donald Trump. Right. So that's one. I mean, that to me is the big tell. The other big tell is this media, this faction, the progressive faction, believes they can use the media to bury anything. Right. It's like, what do you mean, Joe Biden is in cognitive decline? I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing about that in the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN or MSNBC. So I just don't see that as being that significant. I think they look at Joe Biden and they're like, why mess with a good thing? We're going to keep Joe Biden in there, and we're going to ride that horse until it's finished. That's how I see it. And Rich, you and I have been studying these guys, what they've been up to for quite a while. And these are not normal people. I mean, these are pathological. Look at how they've attacked Donald Trump. Look at how they've gone after the American public. These are very sick people. I would like it to be normal. So I think a lot of the times when people are saying like, no, they got to rotate Biden out, they got to put someone in, I'm like, God bless you, because you're talking about it as if we're at a normal moment in American politics. And I so wish that were the case, but it's not the case, because you look at all the evidence, and all the evidence shows that's not where we are right now in our political system. So I think
Smith,
that they go.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, that was it. I was just blowing more hot air.
Yeah. No, I wanted to get your take on whether how much mileage you think he gets out of the latest maneuver, which is the $39 billion in student debt relief for 804,000 Americans that now don't have to pay back a student loan. I think this is going to be pretty. My thought is that he already tried it one way. The court said you can't do it that way. So they went back to the drawing board and said, oh, we can do it this way. And so they're doing it that way. And I think they're going to be successful that way. And it won't be the initial amount. I think the initial amount was for like 36 million people.
Yeah.
This is for under a million people. But I think that's still a lot of people that are going to be like, hey, thanks, Joe Biden. Do you think that carries a lot of weight? Does this have legs?
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's a big deal because I think it's another, this is what Democrats are very good about, paying Democrats to be Democrats. And so that's what this is. We've all seen the numbers. They try to make it like, oh, no, we're helping out these poor people who are paying off their student loans, these poor kids from working class communities or minority communities that wanted to get a leg up. And now that's not what's happening. It's a whole bunch of people who went to graduate school. It's a whole bunch of people with law schools. That's what it is, right? So it's Democrats. That's what they're doing. The Democrats are excellent about paying Democrats to be Democrats. So will this change votes? No, I don't think so. But I think it's what the Democrats always do. Like, believe me, your money is coming. Your money will get there on time. Just when you need it.
The check is in the mail.
Exactly. Don't worry. Just make sure you show up and get your family out there to show up and vote too. Your money's coming. And, they keep promises like that. I mean, it's dirty and it's nasty, but they keep those promises. So I don't think that's really going to shake a lot of things up electorally. But I think, again, it underscores for the American people, for decent, hardworking Americans who don't expect to be paid on account of the way they vote, right? I think they're going to look at this and go like, well, it's disgraceful. Again, it's disgraceful. It's graft. So, it's bad news, but hardly surprising that this is where the Democratic Party is going again. And it's what they do. This is what all the climate change infrastructure is about. And again, it's not about paying off. It's not about paying off. It's not about paying off African Americans, Latinos who vote Democratic in the cities, who could actually really use this, especially after, it's not about funding the police in inner cities. It's not about protecting those parts of the Democratic base. It's about paying off elites, right? This is what climate change is about. It's about paying off elites, right? These are the super elites. People have all this money invested in this stuff. It's paying off people like Jennifer Granholm, like John Kerry, right, who are in the administration. So again, this is just Democrats being Democrats, and God willing,
what they do.
Most Americans will turn around, or enough Americans to turn around and go, yeah, we're sick and tired of this. This is ridiculous. Do we have an option? And as it turns out, every 4 years, Americans have an option.
Lee Smith, I want to switch gears and get your take on the Biden bribery scandal, which seems to have been overshadowed by the cocaine gate in the White House, which turns out to be a big nothing burger, which doesn't surprise me either. But we're going to get your opinion on that and whether or not the Justice Department is actually extorting Joe Biden. I'd love to get your thoughts on that straight ahead. Plus, your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We are on with Lee Smith. Lee Smith, author of The Plot Against the President. And we're having a discussion on all things Biden right now. And while the Cocaine Gate story covered up the Biden bribery scandal, I think that's still very much alive and well. And Lee Smith has an interesting piece on his local page where he asks the question, is the Justice Department extorting Joe Biden? Lee Smith, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I to come back to the whole it's not. Joe Biden is a part of a network, right? Having spent so much time in Washington, he's a part of networked interest. And I think that's one way to understand a lot of things that are going on in Washington right now. That Joe Biden is essentially a front man or an avatar for a whole bunch of Beltway interests. I think that's how we understand the 51 Spies letter, right? This letter produced almost exclusively by former CIA people that at a certain point Biden interest intersected with institutional and personal interest of senior CIA officials. I think, Rich, I don't know if you've been following this at all, but the indictment, DOJ's indictment of this Israeli-American think tank guy, Gal Luft, which is really just astonishing. I don't know if you checked that out.
Well, we discussed it a little bit a day or two ago, but really didn't get to dig into it because he was the one that was kind of like a one-off. We weren't expecting that, and all of a sudden, voila, here he is indicted for being a whistleblower.
Well, here's my take on that, is that, if you look at what the Bidens do, their retaliation is not that bad, right? They didn't really, when Tony Bobulinski came out and spoke to Tucker Carlson in 2020 about what Hunter and Joe Biden were up to. Why? Because they just bury it in the press. So the Bidens, they're nasty and they're corrupt, allegedly corrupt, clearly nasty. But they can just bury things through the media. So, but if you look at this indictment, you really have to check out this indictment, and I encourage your listeners to check it out too, because it's very vicious. And the idea that a think tank guy, I worked at a think tank in Washington. It's basically a bunch of, how about this? I'll include myself as a pencil neck geek. That's basically what it's about. So the idea that these people are involved in, in weapons trafficking is absolutely preposterous, but that's what the indictment is about. So here's how I see that indictment. I think that indictment is not about the Bidens taking revenge on this guy, Gal Luft. I think this is about the FBI itself, because you'll notice in Miranda Devine's reporting, and other people have pointed out, that what Gal Luft talks about is that the Bidens had a source inside the FBI referred to as One Eye. So the way that I see this as it's the FBI and the DOJ themselves taking revenge on this guy. Anyway, my bigger point is, when people look and see what's happening in Washington, D.C., it's not about Joe and Hunter Biden. These guys are, as it turns out, what we can see right now, they're not pulling in billions and billions of dollars. If you look at the real institutional interest, these are people who've been in the Beltway for a very long time. They run very large institutions. I'm not saying that the Bidens are okay. I believe, too, that that they're not okay, that they're corrupt and they're dirty. But there's a lot of other stuff that's going on here, and a lot of it has to do with, again, the institutional stakes held by large bureaucracies and the national security establishment, like the CIA and like the FBI. So I think that's an important thing for people to understand. So you asked me if I think it's possible the DOJ and the FBI are holding something over the Bidens. Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that that this, in a sense, is a very, very important and powerful part of the network right now that is working behind the avatar of Joe Biden. Does that make sense?
Lots of sense, because when you put it in that, and again, this is just a working theory, but when you posit that theory against why Biden acts the way he does versus China, and a lot of people think he's been turned by China, he's an agent of China, this and that, but then again, he'll turn around and not do China's bidding. And is it a cover-up? Is it a smokescreen? Or is it just more of an example of it really isn't beholden to China per se. He might succumb to some of their pressures every now and again, and I think some of his foreign policy people are weak on China, and perhaps some of them are sympathetic toward China, as Joe might be. But I don't know that he's completely sold out. But when it comes to the FBI, the CIA, who knows? We always think that Garland's doing Biden's bidding. You're right. It may very well be Biden doing Garland's bidding, and Garland's doing the bidding of whomever.
I think and you talk about China. everyone has not everyone, because if you read the New York Times or the Washington Post, you don't have any idea what the Biden's relationship is with Chinese enterprises affiliated with the Beijing government and the People's Liberation Army. Look, all of Washington is rotten with Chinese influence. So it's hardly just the Bidens. I mean, it's not just the Democratic Party. It's large parts of the Republican Party as well, right? And I'm talking about senior Republican officials. We're talking about, if you look at Mitch McConnell's relationships, with Beijing through American business, if you look at the donor class, if you look at the people who are pouring money in, and this is, I think, a very important thing for Americans to keep straight. When we talk about, the Biden administration is really competing with China, is China's a rival, and so do Republicans. That's nonsense, right? Because if you look at the top donors, the stakes that they have in China, there is no way, never mind the fact that we're running out of ammunition and we couldn't take on the People's Liberation Army to defend Taiwan. Can you imagine? Let me give you a sense of the first three people who called Joe Biden: George Soros, David Rubenstein, and Bob Iger. Right? All of these people who are very interested in U.S. relations with China. Right? There is no way that the Democratic Party cannot run presidential elections without the money of Americans whose cash flow is dependent on business with China. So again, that's just to say that Joe Biden is a part of a network, and he's an avatar for it right now.
Right.
There's a lot of people who have a lot of money, power, and prestige at stake in this disgusting, grotesque relationship between American elites and Chinese Communist Party elites. This is certainly not to give exculpate Joe Biden, just to say this runs throughout all of Washington, as well as Wall Street, as well as Palo Alto and Hollywood too. It's disgusting.
Wow. It's really well put. Lee Smith, hang on right there. We're going to come back and wrap it up. I got to take a quick pause right here. Folks, we're on with Lee Smith. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, Lee Smith, journalist and author, former senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with your writings, with the work that you do, and how they could follow you.
Oh, that's very kind, Rich. I appreciate it. Yeah, again,
yes,
I started the locals community a couple of months ago, and so there's some writing. I'm doing some live streams, and I really hope people will follow me there. There's also, my regular columns for Tablet Magazine, doing stuff for Epoch Times, and I got a couple book projects in the works, which I'll be excited to talk to you about as they develop further. But again, it's a real pleasure. I'm so grateful to you for bringing me on tonight. Thank you so much, Rich.
You bet, Lee Smith. Anytime, brother. God bless you. Keep up the good work. Folks, give him a follow at Lee Smith DC on Twitter and all the social media. Let's quickly go to the phones. Go to Pat in Sedona, Arizona, listening on KDGO streaming. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you for the vine. I'd like to talk about the indifference of Joe Biden in the border crisis with the fentanyl problem. There's so much coming over the border. These people are spilling it all over the border on the ground. It's awful. I tell you what, Hollywood is now knowing what this fentanyl indifference means to the people of America who have been hurt for years, and they think they're so high and mighty. There's a gentleman named Robert De Niro.
Yeah, well, we can't get into the gentleman's name, but you're right. They do nothing about the problem, and they know all about it. Pat, thank you for your comment. We're going to bring that up a little bit later as well. What are we doing about fentanyl? The border's still wide open. Plus, we've got all sorts of things happening in Congress. They say they don't even know whose cocaine it is. We're going to get to that as well. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you this Friday night. If you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, feel free. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And there's a bunch of things going on Capitol Hill, and we're going to get to the bottom of a whole lot of them, right? So some of the things I want to talk about are cocaine. What happened with the investigation into cocaine? We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I want to get some reaction on that, though, because I think it's interesting how some people are satisfied, others are not satisfied. Many, like me, are very cynical and just thought nothing was going to happen to begin with. But we also had a busy week on Capitol Hill with Christopher Wray testifying on a myriad of issues, with many people saying they caught him in lies, talking about censorship, forgetting to do this, forgetting to do that. I mean, so many things were revealed from Christopher Wray's testimony, director of the FBI. So we're going to touch on that as well. And I want to do it with one of my favorites, right? We've got a bunch of reporters that we talked to, but one of my favorites, especially from Capitol Hill, Kerry Picket. She's with the Washington Times, and she's here with us tonight. Kerry Picket, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
You bet. Anytime. Always a pleasure. So I want to dig into this because this FBI, CIA, Secret Service investigation into the just ending of an investigation, saying, look, we don't know. And, I tried to leave the door open yesterday, trying to be doubtful, saying, well, maybe they're going to come back and say we found something else. But it seems they said, look, we can't find anything. There's no prints on this. There's no this. There's no that. We can't pinpoint who it is, so we're done here. I think it's extremely troubling, and that's part of the headline of one of your pieces, extremely troubling. GOP lawmakers are irate because the Secret Service quit this investigation of the White House cocaine. So let's talk about that. Kerry Picket.
Yeah, that's right. So what we have here was about a 11-day investigation that went into this, shall we call it Cocaine Gate, over at the White House. So when we first found out about it last weekend, that cocaine was found over at the White House, between last weekend and now going into this upcoming weekend, there was about 3 different locations where the cocaine was quote unquote found, and ultimately it landed over at the over the West Wing foyer in these cubby holes, over in one cubby hole in particular, where you have staff that ultimately, where they put their personal belongings, usually their cell phone devices, and it's
now,
kind of
Kerry
like if
Picket,
you've ever
let me
been
ask you: these cubbies, do tourists also have access to them?
No.
Okay, because you know why I'm asking? No. Because earlier today on The View on ABC, Sonny Hostin said that this was clearly just some stupid tourist that forgot their blow at the White House. And it's only like 10 seconds, but I want you to listen to this.
So that's the thing. It's like Cocaine Gate. We don't know who did this. I'm thinking maybe it's a tourist, a stupid tourist, a guest, somebody like that. And you've got to put your phone there. You've got to put your bags there. You got to put stuff there. And so somebody just,
who brings their cocaine to the White House?
They left their stash.
So they're making light of it, but in reality, you're saying that this is not an area where a tourist could just randomly leave this. Kerry Picket.
No, Rich, make no mistake. There are certain doors of the White House where certain people enter the complex, and this particular door is where staff goes into, and maybe they'll have a guest with them. But we're talking. This is a very restricted area, so this is where, like, in particular, senior staff. So if you think about it, going back to the Trump administration, say someone like Kellyanne Conway or maybe Stephen Miller, that's the door that like they would go through. Okay. We're not talking about like someone who's going in for a White House tour. All right. So we're not talking about just some, tourist who's like, yeah, I'm just going to put my blow over here in this cubby hole. No, that's not how that works. Okay.
So Sunny Hostin is definitely mistaken here.
Sunny Hostin is talking from complete ignorance of someone who has probably never been in the White House before. And if she has, it was probably for a tour, and she's probably never even seen that foyer before. Right. So let's actually get that straight. That being said, so if you think about this setup, it's kind of like, similar, not exactly, but so much of that of what you've seen over at ski lodges or maybe bowling alleys where they have those little lockers with those keys that like pull out, and then you just, that's the end of that. In this particular case, the cocaine was found in locker number 50. Now, there's 182 lockers. And, I asked Lauren Boebert, who was briefed by the Secret Service, because she is one of the oversight committee members, among others. And she has said something interesting. This particular key that was connected to locker 50, it is missing. It's not there anymore. So, and on top of that, the locker door was also left open. Okay. So, it was almost as if, the person who left their Coke there didn't bother to lock that door of the cubby hole. Something very interesting there. Yes. And stole the key of locker 50. Very interesting. On top of that, when I asked, okay, wait, well, hold on a second here. Was there any cameras in this area of the West Wing foyer? She said no cameras in that area. So that's something even more interesting. So, you have to keep in mind that, once again, a tourist isn't going to know all these extra factors here. Right.
Now, I find it interesting, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's interesting that there are parts of the White House, save the bathrooms, that don't have coverage by camera. Do you find that weird, or is it just me?
I find it pretty weird. I mean, Secret Service is now going, well, I guess we're going to have to change that then. We're going to have to start putting cameras up there. Well, way to go, guys. Clap, clap, clap. Gold star for you. We'll put the cameras in there after the fact. But ultimately, is this story going to go away? I don't think so. I think that you're going to have Republicans who are going to be pounding away at this until they find out who it is. I think eventually maybe they will, but at that point it probably is not going to matter.
Yeah, well, I think it's important because, in any administration, right, Democrat or Republican, I don't know, maybe you can correct the record if I'm wrong here, but I've never seen this happen before where we found cocaine in the White House and, they had to test it to find out what it was because it was a mysterious white powder, and it turns out to be cocaine in the West Wing outside of the tourist area. I don't think that's ever happened, and I think the American people deserve a response. And I feel like Biden hasn't addressed it at all. Karine Jean-Pierre has been flippant and dismissive at best.
That's right, and this was the third time that drugs were found. The other two times it was marijuana, but this was kept hush hush, and it was only brought out during this briefing over on Capitol Hill this past week. But once again, the Secret Service said we are looking to change our security methods, and like, okay, guys. You do that. But going forward, I do think that this whole idea that this foyer, just tourists can be there. No, actually, we're probably going to find out that this cocaine either belonged to a staffer or someone within the Biden family. So, see.
All right, folks, we're on with Kerry Picket, senior congressional reporter for the Washington Times. You may have heard her on the radio from time to time. She's a veteran in the swamp, and she knows what's going on. We're going to continue with her straight ahead, and we're going to discuss what's going on with FBI Director Wray, because he was in the hot seat earlier this week, and we've heard a lot about that over the last couple of days. But Kerry's got a lot of interesting articles that she's written on Ray's involvement and these hearings. So we're gonna touch on those straight ahead. Plus your calls 833-482-5337 833-4-Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the
protecting
question
anyone
about whether or not
politically.
that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you.
So FBI Director Christopher Wray dodging questions about all sorts of things. Kerry, Picket, what are some of the takeaways you took from the testimony?
Well, keep in mind, Christopher Wray's main goal, as far as he was concerned, being that there are so many scandals that the FBI is involved in right now, was that he just needed just to go in there, just be completely dumped on by the Republicans, because it doesn't matter how much the Democrats may have been, defending him, and even Camilla Jayapal, who's a Democrat, progressive Democrat, dumped on him a little bit too. Was just to get through it, deal with it, and not say much, and
live to fight
get
another
out.
day, right? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. And he was able to do it. That being said, though, was he able to come out looking pretty? No, not at all. Because all it did was just open up more doors, open up more questions about what he's doing to cover up a lot of the scandals happening over at the FBI, whether it's, as you were just playing that clip there, of Congressman Matt Gaetz, Florida, from the Florida congressman, talking about protecting Hunter Biden in his in his business dealings, his corrupt business dealings there, or dealing with the IRS whistleblower, and that whole case there. I mean, or the issues going on over at the school board protests, and why the FBI was labeling parents to be domestic terrorists. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I mean, I'm just going off the top of my head right now. It's almost easy to remember all the problems going on over at the FBI. The piece that I wrote on the day that Ray testified was the fact that you had an FBI whistleblower say, "Yeah, guess what? I was told, among others, over at the FBI, the deputy director told us that there were confidential human sources from the FBI, or rather who were talking to the FBI, who were at January 6th. And we were told, don't even acknowledge the fact that they were at the January 6th riot, because it would be too problematic and it would be too embarrassing for the FBI to even acknowledge that they were there." So there's so much that's been going on over at the FBI that Chris Wray has ensnared himself with. But the problem is that he's having a lot of issues kind of keeping everything in the air, and he is likely going to pay the consequences in some way, shape, or form, whether it has to do with a resignation or it has to do with a contempt charge. But we'll probably see it in the next few months or so.
Now, I know that he made it very clear that, or it seemed that he made it clear that Ray Epps was not a government employee or informant, which I think a lot of people were surprised to hear. And there was also the Russian spies in Ukraine that are suspected of fooling the FBI into censoring Americans on social media. How did that play out?
Oh, yeah. That whole thing that you are talking about, where you had over in like right after the Russians invaded Ukraine, you had the Ukrainians ask the FBI, "Hey guys, since you do such a great job censoring Americans on social media, can you go on to onto the social media platforms around the U.S. and do the same thing for us? Basically, go and censor them and basically moderate their speech in terms of what we want. So, like, you can go in there and like say how awesome Zelensky is and how awful Vladimir Putin is, like that kind of stuff." But you see, it totally blew up in the FBI space because the Ukrainian Secret Service, who basically asked the FBI to do this, they were infiltrated by the Russians. Okay, so next thing you knew, they were like, having them totally deal with posts that were actually saying great stuff about Vladimir Putin. And it's like, oh gosh, and it turned into a huge cluster. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, there was no shortage of angles for stories coming out of Ray and his testimony and the crazy that was going on during the week.
Exactly. But of course, according to Ray, they don't moderate social media. They don't censor social media. But a lot of people are pretty much finding out otherwise.
Yeah, social media is a whole additional topic that we've got to dig into. Now, Kerry Picket, let everybody know how they can, check out all of these great articles that you're writing and follow you and where.
Sure. Just come check out WashingtonTimes.com. You can check out my stuff as well as my colleagues' stuff, or check me out on Twitter, KerryPicket, just one T, just like the fence.
That's right. Well, one T. That's the Puerto Rican version. Kerry Picket, everybody. Follow her at Kerry Picket on Twitter and check her out at the WashingtonTimes.com. Kerry Picket, I want to thank you for being here. It's always good to have sources like you that are out there that are putting out the truth, and we get to pick your brain a little bit. So I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Bye-bye.
You bet. Enjoy the weekend. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. Your calls and more are coming up. And we're going to continue this conversation of social media with somebody who started a social media platform. He started Wimkin Social Media. He also was part of the team that started Friendster back in the days. And his name, Jason Sheppard. He's an entrepreneur and free speech advocate, and he's going to talk to us a little bit how this House Judiciary report says that the FBI worked with the Ukrainians to remove verified social media accounts. We were just talking about it with Kerry Picket. He's going to dig in. So don't go anywhere. Plus your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to it.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So as a result of the actions of James Comey, the disgraced James Comey, and the FBI, they've interfered with the elections in both 2016 and 2020. Will that interference happen again in 2024 by the FBI?
The FBI is not going to be interfering in elections.
They did in 2016.
Well, I don't know that that's what Mr. Durham found. What I would tell you again is that there was conduct that I consider unacceptable and unrepresentative.
You can be in denial if you want to.
I'm not in denial,
Mr. Drake,
sir.
You can be in denial on this. That's exactly what happened.
All right, that is Rep. Tom Tiffany with Christopher Wray, the FBI director, at a House Oversight hearing on Wednesday. And there's a lot of talk about what type of interference the FBI runs, right? As a result of that, there's a House Judiciary report from just last week that claims the FBI worked with a Ukrainian agency to remove verified social media accounts. And we just talked about this in brief, and I want to dig into it from a different angle. With respect to somebody who understands the social media landscape a little bit differently than you and I might, because he's created a couple in his time as a technology founder. Jason Sheppard, he's the founder of Wimkin Social Media. He's an entrepreneur, free speech advocate. He's launched other social media platforms over the years, and he's out here providing alternatives to combat big tech censorship. Jason Sheppard, welcome.
Thank you so much, Rich. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, you bet. So I want to dig into this story a little bit, and really, and the theme, or really the spirit behind it, which is our government it's alleged that our government, the FBI, was working with the Ukrainian government to remove verified social media accounts in an attempt to censor them. Walk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, so that's actually it's still to me sort of a breaking story, because we've already sort of lived through some of the Twitter files that were released, and we all learned. I think we already suspected, obviously, but we learned that the FBI actually had residency in the Twitter offices, and
right.
We're paying millions of dollars a year to actually go in and have access, and obviously, basically, at least request to take something down if they didn't agree with the narrative, or if they were trying to say it was criminal. But this new aspect with working with foreign agencies now is absolutely something it's groundbreaking, and it's something that even with me and our dealings with the Select Committee subpoenaing us and that nature, this one surprised me a little bit, because it turns out that you're working with a foreign government, and actually against another foreign government. And that's not the way this is supposed to work in America.
Yeah, last I checked, it's definitely not supposed to be the way it works. Let's talk about why it's working that way, right? How do we, so we know the problem. We've got the FBI seemingly finding backdoor ways to skirt the Constitution, to skirt the spirit of the law, and their partners in complicity here are social media companies. Not all of them. I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but definitely the usual suspects: Facebook, Twitter, etc. So, being from the tech sector, being from the social media space, what can you say seems very out of the norm? And I know you've already alluded to the FBI, like you said, having residents, FBI lawyers working at Twitter, and having this very more than, I'm going to say, collegial relationship via email, where they could just request things and they get done. But what should the norm be, and what are some of the things that are out of the norm that you've observed?
Well, I think first and foremost, so the federal judge who actually issued his order and his opinion on July 4th, which you certainly cannot
Judge
ignore that timing. Yeah, Judge Doughty, you cannot ignore that timing to do that on July 4th, because there's no court in the country that's convened. But, realistically, I think that is the norm. I mean, these individuals, no matter it doesn't matter what agency you're from. It doesn't matter what administration you're from. Because these ABC agencies are all doing it. It's not just, the Biden administration. It's not, we have, it's more or less, you have the CIA that's going to be able to do this. You have the FBI. You have, many different ABC agencies, again, that are coming in and trying to do this. And, the norm should be that they're not, if they want to maybe respectfully request something be removed, but it's more or less, to me, Rich, and, it's happened to us again with those 3 subpoenas by the J6 Select Committee. It's more intimidation, and I think it's just more, haggle and hassle that, people just don't want to have to deal with. And, when I got subpoenaed, based on 8 posts that were on my platform, 8 posts, that's how much they're looking at it, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we have 1 million posts a day on our platform, and if they can scrutinize that much, it really... It tells you that, these people are being weaponized, and they are trying to silence a certain type of, individual that they don't see that fits their narrative, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, and it's scary to think that that's where we are. Folks, we're on with Jason Sheppard, founder of Wimpkin Social Media and Friendster. He's a free speech advocate. He's walking us through this story that, again, it's a couple of days old, but as the days go on, we learn more about it, right? This report came out shortly after the federal judge issued that injunction. And then a couple of days after that, you had Director Wray testifying, and many are saying untruthfully testifying about this and other things. And this is, in many ways, a still developing story where the United States is working with our FBI, working with the Ukrainian secret service type of agency to remove verified social media accounts. And it's a damning situation, in my opinion. We're going to continue with this conversation as well as get a sense of the state of technology and social media from Jason's perspective when we come back. I'm going to invite you to give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Jason Sheppard, social media founder. He's founder of Friendster and Wimpkin Social Media. He's out there fighting for free speech. And Jason, tell us what you think the current state of affairs is in the tech industry. Do you feel it's as divided as the American electorate? Like you've got those that are for free speech and those that are against it. And I don't want to say against it, but like those that believe that it's the technology company that knows best versus those that believe people know best? Or is it still like one big happy family in the Silicon Valley?
That's a good question. I think you asked it right too. It's one big happy in Silicon Valley because everybody out there is getting rich. But, when it comes down to actually, I don't think people hate free speech. I just think they hate it when it doesn't go their way.
It's not convenient.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, free speech, to be quite honest with you, I've never seen it be such a threat before. I mean, I don't think anybody really has on this level when you actually, think about just I'm 42. I've never once, I never thought I'd be in this position first and foremost, but, it's really hard to actually hammer down here because, I had 700,000 followers on my Twitter account when Jack Dorsey was still there. And I was banned for sharing specific things that were 100% now scientifically proven to be true. They were based on vaccinations, they were based on COVID. And, for individuals to lose their accounts, I mean, Rich, there's people that this is their livelihood. Social media is how they make their money. It's how they, feed their families. And for these individuals to come down and just hurt the conservative side of things, I don't think it's one big happy family in the world at all right now. I mean, there's no unity, even though I wish there really could be. But after conservatives have put up what they've, put up with for, let's say, probably about the last 7-8 years, maybe even a little bit more than that, it's all one-sided. And these big tech companies, they're getting their money from liberals. They're getting their money from, the Pfizers and the Modernas and these companies that just want to pump and pump and pump them. And they don't appreciate when, they allow free speech and they allow, them to be second-guessed and questioned. And, I don't know when that's going to change. I actually don't see it getting any better at this point.
Now, how did you get thrust into this? I know that you're a tech guy and you've been the founder of a couple of social media platforms, but how did this not every guy that's involved in social media ends up becoming an advocate for free speech and out there, being vocal about this. In fact, I'd say most of these guys try to stay away from that so that they can kind of fly under the radar. But what did it for you?
Well, to be quite honest with you, before I started Wimkin, I worked at one of the largest health insurers and medical networks in the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, actually 4 states, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and New York. And my team, I was a business analyst and, again, an IT manager, and my team was spearheaded to deliver 130,000 COVID tests to 2,300 primary care physicians in our network. And we got this project in September of 2019. So the math did not equate to me. Why did we find out about this 2 months before COVID was really even known about? And then it really turned out, it turned my stomach, to be quite honest with you. And even worse than that, these tests that we were utilizing, they only tested for any type of coronavirus. And at that point in time, there was around 69 or 70 that were known. And each of us on a daily basis, even if we're healthy and asymptomatic, we usually carry between 6 to 9 in our body. So these tests were coming back 100% positive. And I said, my name is not going to be on this. I'm not going to be a part of this. So tried to change it. Of course, that didn't work. Money is money in healthcare, that's for sure. But right. I started a platform. It was just a website. It was worldmustknow.com. And it was just to get the truth out there about what was happening with testing. And, I had the world's most comprehensive timeline. We had about probably 40 to 50 entries a day on what states were doing, what countries were doing. And, we ended up getting up to 35,000 users visiting us a day. And they wanted to contribute. They wanted to, tell their stories. They wanted to, comment and actually, write articles. And, that's when I changed it over to WMKN, which stands for World Must Know Now, in honor of free speech. And that's where we started. That's how I actually ended up doing this. I wanted the world to know what was going on.
How is that going?
We're doing great. I mean, we put up with our 8-month App Store bans. We were banned 3 days after Parler was. We were number 1 in both app stores at that point in time. Oh, they did everything they could, Rich, to keep us stifled in our growth. That's for sure. And but it's going great. We're up over 9 million users now. When we were banned, we were around 400,000. When we were subpoenaed by the J6 Select Committee, which was in November of 21, we had about 2.5 million. And
now,
this is why I think
you get subpoenaed by the J6 subcommittee.
They blamed us for the insurrection. Let's be honest. That's essentially what it was. I'm partners with Wendy Bell Radio, and I was on her studio, and I got a call from the U.S. Capitol. And of course, I'm taking it because I think it's she's fantastic. She truly is. She's one of the best. And
I'll be on Wendy Bell's show tomorrow, everybody. If anybody's watching, check it out on Newsmax, 4 p.m.
Fantastic. Oh, my God. Oh, that's fantastic. Yes. Common Sense. She's fantastic. But yeah, so I was in her studio, and I got a call from the U.S. Capitol, and I was like, this must be a spoof call, but it actually wasn't. It was somebody that was trying to track me down just to serve the
I would totally think it's a spoof call.
I did. And you know what? It was funny because Wendy's radio producer is Brock, and he looked at me when I came back in, and I was pretty shook. I'm not going to lie to you. That was a very, very big issue. Even though it was 10 months after it happened, we still had some fallout. And, the only thing I could tell them was, hey, contact my attorneys in California. Plain and simple.
Right.
And,
sure.
But
never
what they did, Rich, no, never. But what they asked for, you would not believe, and I'll be happy to show these documents to you and all of your listeners for sure.
Well, before you tell us, let's leave everybody hanging. All right, that's rule number 1 in show business. Always leave them wanting more. Let's take a quick pause here. Folks, we're on with Jason Sheppard. He's the founder of WMKN Social Media, and he's about to tell us what they asked for when they called him, and he thought it was a fake call, but it was a real call, and this is getting really juicy. Give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number, and remember, we're just minutes away from Open Phone America, the third and final hour of the program, where we get to take calls from everywhere, from New York to Alaska and everywhere in between where you guys are listening to this program. Looking forward to speaking with you on Open Phone America, a long-time tradition on this program that's older than me. So you can get your calls in for that right away, 833-4-VALDEZ, and we're coming back with Jason Sheppard.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. now. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Social media, censorship, good guys, bad guys. It's a mess out there. Folks, we're on with Jason Sheppard, founder of Wimkin Social Media. He was part of Friendster as well, and he's out there battling for free speech, and he's describing how he got a call from the Capitol because they tried to blame the insurrection on him. What did they ask you for, Jason Sheppard?
Well, on the phone, they didn't ask me for anything other than just where to serve a subpoena to. But, of course, that was given to my attorney in California. But so to be quite honest with you, Rich, Wimkin is the most private platform that I know of. We don't even verify your email address at setup. We don't take phone numbers because we saw this coming down the line, so to speak. But they asked for email addresses. They asked for phone numbers. They asked for credit card numbers. They asked for private messages from user to user. They asked for text messages, which I really didn't understand because we don't do anything with text messaging.
And this was like, hey, do me a favor. We want to see these things. Or like, hey, we've got a warrant and you've got to turn this over.
No warrant. We did get a specific warrant for a specific user. That was the only time. But our attorney essentially, they asked us for algorithms. We don't have any algorithms. We're too small to have algorithms. Sorry. And
Al Gore
they also asked.
Way.
What's that?
I said Al Gore invented those, by the way.
Oh, interesting.
Algorithms.
Funny, but
yes. Go right ahead.
Yes, algorithms. Yes. And then they asked us to define what we thought misinformation and disinformation was. They asked us for any type of platform remedies we have to remove information, and I think it was more or less a feeler to see where we stood in terms of how strong our stance was on free speech and actually our privacy, because our messenger's encrypted. We can't even see messages between people. It's like a telegram, even though telegrams now, I think they're named in 14 or 15 different cases in the United States alone, in terms of federal prosecution for some types of, and alleged insurrection crimes. But they asked for literally every single piece of information on every user on our platform. And at that point in time, when we were, that was November when they asked us, it was we had about 2.5 million users at that point. And you could just imagine the undertaking that would be, first and foremost, to go through that. And, maybe this is where they would come in and say, hey, we'll pay you to do this. Like they did to Twitter. I don't know. I mean, we would never even entertain that, to be honest with you, because, the First Amendment is what this country was founded upon. And right. I will take that to my grave. I mean, I sacrificed a lot already for this platform, and I'm definitely going to continue to do that. But yeah, what they asked for, Rich, it was outrageous. It was the most overreach that I've ever seen in my life. And the fact they actually put this in two different, they were more demands. They weren't, it wasn't a subpoena, but they asked
were forceful
to preserve all our records. Oh yeah. They asked us to preserve all our records.
Before we run out of time, I want to make sure everybody knows how they could find out about Wimkin Social Media and follow you online and learn about the great things you're doing. So let everybody know.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, it's Wimkin.com. It's WIM as in Mary, KIN as in Nancy.com. We're also back in the app stores after an 8-month fight of beating them. And we will stand up for your rights, that's for sure.
Jason Sheppard, founder of Wimkin Social Media. Make sure you check him out, Wimkin.com. Jason, I want to thank you for being here. Godspeed to you, man. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Rich. You as well.
You bet. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. Open Phone America. You, me, and a bunch of calls in between. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you tonight, Friday night. For some, it's already Saturday morning, but yes, this is the Friday night edition. Our phone number, 833-4825-337-8334, Valdez. And I'm happy to have a conversation with you on just about anything, because this is your time to be heard. I just kind of interact with you on these things. And this is truly my favorite part of this job is having this conversation with each and every one of you, this amazing audience. And lots of things to talk about. We talked about a lot of hard news and then some analysis on the big news. But I want to talk about some of the other stuff. It's Friday, and I want to get into this story right here. Listen to this. And actually, the version I'm looking at says most or many on dating apps are already in relationships and aren't seeking actual dates, according to a new study. Nearly 2/3 of Tinder users surveyed said they were already in relationships. Some of them were married while they were using the app. Unbelievable. And I'm shocked at this. I mean, because there are websites already for people that want to hook up, where if you're married, you could say, hey, look, I'm married and I want to hook up. There's websites for that. Why would everybody go to Tinder where people are potentially looking to meet their mate or whatever? I just think that's interesting, right? So that's part of the story that's out there. Of course, there was a serial killer in Long Island who was captured, and this is a big deal, obviously a big deal, because you don't always catch serial killers. So we might touch base on that a little bit as well. Plus, there was, let me see, what is the other story that I wanted to cover here? Mike Pence and Tucker Carlson clashed during a heated interview. Wow, big deal. Let's see, not a lot. That's not too big of a story for me here. That one's not that interesting. Let me see. There was another one I had flagged here that I wanted to get into. It was, yes, the syphilis story was a very big one. The guy who was arrested outside of Obama's house, his indictment was unsealed. And this guy's a real wackadoo, for real. Listen to this. So he's already a defendant in one of the January 6 cases. And again, that for the record, that could just mean that he was there on the Capitol grounds and was charged with parading. But he took it a step further. He was arrested with guns and ammunition in his van near Barack Obama's house. He's facing 2 felony weapons charges in addition to the misdemeanor and trespassing counts that they put on him. And his name, Taylor Taranto. He's a defendant in the riot. I just said that. Why do they have to be so repetitious in these articles? 37 years old. Last month, he was in Obama's Kalorama neighborhood after the former president Donald Trump, shared the address on social media. According to, let's see, you got to be careful here, the Washington Post. So take it with a grain of salt, my friends. The Justice Department said on Friday that Taranto was captured on video during the Capitol riot, standing at the entrance to the Speaker's lobby, while at the entrance, Ashley Babbitt, God rest her soul, attempted to jump through a glass window and was shot by the Capitol Police. So that's the story on this guy, Taranto. And again, I don't know him. I'm not a special pleader for him. I just know that he went to Obama's house after the fact, and it doesn't seem like he went there to protest, right? At least from what I can see. If I'm wrong, you let me know. It seems that you want to be careful, right? I mean, I would be very suspicious if somebody was in a van with ammunition and guns outside of Trump Tower or Trump Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago or wherever Trump is living at the time. I think that would be a big deal, right? I think we shouldn't do that. So, when it happens the other way, I think it's equally as, no bueno, right? You just don't want to get into that. And there was another story I mentioned. And this is one that I again, you don't have to touch this with a 10-foot pole if you don't want to, but I just find it remarkable. 128% rise in syphilis cases in the Houston area, and it's linked to pregnant women, according to the health department. Now, this spike, and I gave you some numbers on it earlier, that they're saying it's mainly attributed to pregnant women who ended up passing the disease on to their babies. Right? So this has nothing to do with the old people that I was talking about earlier. That was just, during my government days, I remember going to a meeting and they were saying what a problem this was in the nursing homes. And here's a quote from Lupita Thornton. She's with the Houston Health Department. She says, let's talk about those pregnant females of childbearing capacity. I wonder what that means, childbearing capacity. Does that mean like childbearing age or people with uteruses? Is she trying to make, no, because she says females. Interesting. Anyway, they need to test at their first prenatal visit, at the third trimester, and at delivery. We can encourage people with multiverse partners to test for it as well as other STIs. So that's the current recommendation. Pregnant women passing this on to their children. Very unfortunate. To help curb the issue, the health department is waiving clinical fees for people that want to get tested. Syphilis can go undetected because some have zero visible signs. Certain symptoms can be misinterpreted. And they're urging you, if you are a pregnant woman, and I'm going to add in the Houston area, then you better go get tested because this stuff is all over the place. And I just, wow, what a headline, 128% rise. And, of course, that comes on the heels of finding out that most people on dating apps are already in relationships. And that makes me think, why on earth are we using that relationship app as a hookup app? Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm not on Tinder. I signed up for it one time and just couldn't figure out a picture that I liked. So I just didn't follow through with it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's exactly what everybody's using Tinder for. And obviously 2/3, that's a lot. And maybe I just had it wrong, thinking that that's something people use for actual dates and to meet their future spouse. Maybe that's my naivete. You let me know. Give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I was just going to say, I'm guessing the White House doesn't like that there's no answer here.
Oh, it's unsatisfying
because
for everyone.
It only feeds the beast, the conspiratorial beast that we know of, trying to destroy our
and to answer that, family members typically don't use this entrance. Not that they couldn't, but they typically don't, and they're not asked to put their stuff in cubbies.
All right, so family members aren't putting their stuff in cubbies. It's just employees, senior staff, high-level staff. So are they protecting KJP? I'm wondering who is being protected here, because we know now that it is not somebody that was just randomly touring the White House, as Sonny Hostin just mentioned. Though the question is, and I had it on my on the little question that you could post on Instagram, I had that question posted all day today, which was, so whose cocaine was it in the White House? And I find it fascinating that there are people out there that think that this is insignificant. It's only happened twice before that drugs were found in the White House, and both times were marijuana before this. So it's the only time we've found cocaine in the White House. And the fact that we would minimize this and just say, oh, yeah, we literally shut down the White House. It went into lockdown. They brought in a hazmat team because they didn't know if this was anthrax or some other type of dangerous powder. They test the powder. They realize it's cocaine, and they open up an 11-day investigation into finding out how this cocaine got there. They don't come up with an answer, and yet some people are saying this is not a big deal. Let's go to the phones. Debbie, Canton, Ohio, WNIR. Welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Yes. Good evening, Rich. It's good to talk with you.
Likewise.
I want to tell you, I'm a big Jimbo fan, and I miss him dearly, but I'm enjoying your show as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, really, really enjoy it. I listen at night. I feel that they're putting there's too much press on this. This is ridiculous. There's people dying all around me, all around my neighborhood, my area, from fentanyl. We need to focus more on that and talk about that a little bit. My niece just had an OD a few days ago. She's
my goodness.
battling this. I know, it's really hard. And I don't give a crap who has cocaine in the White House. Let's talk about what really matters right now with my people around me, okay? That's what I want to say, and I think it's overblown. Let's put more emphasis on what really matters right now. That's all I got to say, and I'm glad I got to talk to you.
I'm sorry that you're going through that, Debbie. And so just to make sure I'm getting it clear, you're saying we should have more emphasis on the fact that fentanyl and all these other drugs are coming across the border and are uncontrolled, and there isn't enough of a focus on that?
Yeah. Who's surprised that there's drugs in the White House? Why are we surprised about that? Why are we talking about that? Well, let's put more emphasis on getting these drugs out of our nation right now. It was fentanyl that my niece took, and thank God she's still alive. They had to bust open the window of her car to save her. But it bothers me that they're putting too much emphasis on cocaine in the White House. I don't care who sniffs coke in the White House. I want these drugs out of our nation. Okay?
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm getting emotional.
I understand, and you're entitled to get emotional because I think this is a very serious matter, and I thank you for sharing it with us. And while I understand where you're coming from totally, I've never been through that myself, and I'm glad I haven't, and I feel for you that you are going through that. I'm grateful that your granddaughter's alive, or your niece, excuse me. I think these are equally important issues because I think the fact that we have drugs in the White House, to me, is no surprise because we have a drug problem that's only getting worse and worse and worse. So it makes a lot of sense to me that they're going to turn a blind eye to what's going on at the border when we have people that are, being derelict inside the White House, whomever they may be. And from the conversations we've had, we now know that they're either senior staff or a family member or somebody that is rather high level, not a junior type of person in the administration. So, and of course, in your position, I could totally understand why one would want to focus on something, who cares about one guy's blow in the White House when we've got, so many people dying from fentanyl. And I'm going to go a step beyond and say poisoning, right? Because most of these people are not even trying to score fentanyl. They're usually buying a Xanax pill or something else that's been laced with fentanyl, having no idea that they're ingesting fentanyl in most cases, which is why many are saying they should change the terminology to fentanyl poisoning because they didn't really overdose on something they didn't know they were even taking. And I totally get that and respect your opinion on it. But I think they go part and parcel, Debbie, and I thank you for your call. It's so important that we realize you're right, that we have a problem here and we focus on the problem and what the problem is and what the solution is and how we get beyond this problem. And it's not like they're bringing drugs across the border and just saying, hey, look, we got drugs. And people are saying, no, I'm not interested. I don't want them. No, they're actually taking the drugs, right? And there's a problem with demand. While we have this demand problem, that's to me what we got to work on. If there was no demand for drugs, there wouldn't be a supply for drugs. And sadly, we're seeing this in a lot of areas. This movie that's out that's getting a lot of traction, The Sound of Freedom, is about a huge demand, bigger than any other country on the planet that we know of, where people want to abuse children. So we smuggle children in and we traffic them and we use them for a bunch of things, for whether it's sex, abuse, overnight shifts at slaughterhouses. I mean, they're used for all sorts of things. And I can't help but think, my goodness, we have to do better as a society. But when we are living in a life, or we live in a society, living in a world where children are becoming obsolete, people don't care about kids, they don't care about senior citizens, everybody's just kind of worried about themselves and what they can do. We are now in a time where we've turned a blind eye to God, and it's almost like you're ridiculed if you're one of those people that believes in God, where you're somehow supposed to be celebrated if you're an atheist or agnostic. And we don't see that these things, at least anecdotally, contribute to all the other issues, right? We've got kids that don't know what biological gender, sex, etc. they are. They're being brainwashed into thinking that they can become whatever they want to be if they're not happy in the situation they're in. You've got suicide rates that are through the roof. You've got teen girls that are suffering from depression at the highest levels we've ever seen. You look at all of this and you think, man, I think we're in a bad spot. And things were a lot better when people were in church on Sundays. Now, that might be my own overly simplistic view, putting too much emphasis on what people would call religion. But I would say, no, I think there's an emphasis on morality that's really escaping us, and we have to stay focused on that as a society, not to point the finger at anybody in any individual, but as a whole, we need to do better. We need to do better for each other, in serving each other and loving each other, because the direction we're headed in with cocaine in the White House and people's personal family members experiencing overdoses and children being abused, it's not a situation that's sustainable. It's not a situation that's desirable. And it's not something that anybody should condone, whether it impacts them directly or not. I think if your neighbor's going through something that's difficult, you're going through something that's difficult. And even if it's not in your backyard yet, it will be soon. So you might as well help and make sure things get better. And again, I'm just preaching to the choir here. Again, Debbie, thanks for the call. I appreciate you. Godspeed to you and your family. I hope everything works out well. The rest of your calls and more coming up. We're going to continue our conversation on everything we're talking about. And does anybody remember that song from the 70s, The Hustle? I want to talk about that, too. We're going to talk about that coming up now. Don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez, 833-4-VALDEZ is the number, 833-4-VALDEZ. We're coming right back. Don't move a muscle. All right, America, welcome back. Now, The Hustle, famous dance in the 70s, and somebody recently asked me, hey, Rich, do you hustle? And I was like, no, I'm actually, I was born in 78, so I never really learned to hustle. But found it interesting, and I was listening to Willie Estrada, former gang member turned dancer, and Willie Estrada gave a little explanation, a little bit of a history lesson on the hustle, which I thought was terrific. Older, what I would call an OG or an old school Puerto Rican guy from the South Bronx, explaining the history of the hustle back in the 70s. And I said, you know what? It's short enough where I could share it with our friends in radio, and interesting enough where you're definitely not going to hear this anywhere else. And I know there's a lot of people that tune in to hear about the latest in geopolitical affairs, and we do that for 2 hours straight. But on Fridays, especially in the third hour, I like to let our hair down just a little bit so that we could learn about different things and have conversations on different topics. And we're going to get to your calls. I see the call board is nearly full. There might be one open line left, so we're going to get to you guys, I promise. But I want you to listen to Willie Estrada and this quick explanation. Check this out.
The hustle was born right here in the South Bronx, created by young Puerto Rican teenagers. I was a gang leader in them days, and I can tell you this, the hustle saved my life. I think people need to understand how volatile this area was. The South Bronx was definitely the murder capital of New York. You had to be brave to go to school because there was always violence. The teachers were afraid, to go to teach. We were oppressed. And so what happens when you oppress people? They rebel. They hate the establishment and they do stupid shit. We weren't bad kids. We needed strong, positive leaders. We got that at St. Mary's Center and for several key people that cared about us.
And I think this is a point in history now that we need to reflect on the times of then and think, we need more of that, right? I think we need more community action. I think we need more people out there saying, rather than having and allowing kids and promoting the idea that they should go there and rob as much as they want as long as they don't surpass the $950 threshold, then it's okay. You can go rob all the CVS, Walgreens, and Duane Reade's you can, and you're good. That's not the message we want to send. I think, people coming out of tough neighborhoods and inventing dances like the hustle, that's where we need to be. Not where we are right now. And we're going to get to your calls, which are all over the board on every topic. I love it. I can't wait to have these discussions with you. But let's quickly go to Linda, Albany, New York, WGDJ. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Rich. If I might, just briefly on a couple of things. First of all, the drugs. Total agreement with the lady that called. I would love to see, let's say, a legitimate drug company put ads out reminding children only take something in your mouth that's from a legitimate drugstore. And that would help parents also to have something out there in the media helping remind kids not to take stuff that comes from they don't know where. And secondly, topic on Biden has just called up 3,000 soldiers.
Reserve troops.
Yes. Why does it have to be reserve troops when we have troops? I don't know how many thousands.
Well, I'm guessing because we have a recruitment problem in the military, that's typically what they do wherever they're going to go. They typically will start activating reserve units. That's why they have the reserve, and it's why they train all year to be ready to go. And I don't think we need 3,000 soldiers in Europe at all. But I do understand that the United States is a part of NATO, and this is a big deal. Like, if there is at some point, excuse me, a conflict that involves NATO versus any of those places, Russia, Ukraine, any non-NATO country, the United States will have to send some troops and other, it won't be just aid packages and cluster bombs and whatever else they're sending. That's part of our NATO agreement, is that we all have each other's back. So I'm hopeful that that's not the case, and we don't have a conflict like that. But yeah, concerning, definitely concerning. However, if Trump were in office and he were to say, that's why I'm preparing 3,000 reservists to be at the ready, this could very much be a negotiation tactic saying, do you really want American troops there? Because once we're there, we got to do what we got to do. And I don't think you want that smoke, right? You don't want that problem. So I don't know. I don't know what Biden's doing here. I'm really hoping that we're not about to send 3,000 Americans to some part of Europe. I think, if anything, we should send a couple of jets and handle our business that way. But yeah, I get it, and I appreciate your concern because I share it with you, Linda. I appreciate it. Big shout out to everybody in Albany, upstate New York, WGDJ. Let us continue. Let's take a little bit of a history lesson and swing down to Alabama. Our buddy Ron in Coleman, Alabama, WCUL. Ron, go right ahead quickly. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich. Very
yes,
good
sir.
show.
Thank you.
Before I mentioned about the history, I want to mention, have you ever read or watched the movie The Cross and Switchblade?
Oh, yeah, Nicky Cruz. Yeah, I actually met him one time.
And Eric Estrada.
He played in the movie. I actually have that book right now on my kitchen table.
True story, right?
Yeah, true story. That's Times Square Church.
Very good. Lord works. And but I'll go ahead. In 1866, Nathan Bedford Forrest, with 33 senators from the North, started to distract the voters. So we voted in President Grant, over 500,000 to yes, sir, in the South, and also remember the 23 Republican that were black. They were allowed to vote. We all of us won, like the brothers.
You're right.
You know,
Post-war, I think they called it antebellum back then. Post-war America, it was a lot better. Right? Race relations were better back then than they are now. Ironically, in many ways. And yet, Ron, thanks for the history lesson. I appreciate it. And you're right. That was an interesting scenario back then. And you had so many free black men, former slaves, that were making their way up into Chicago, up into the Northeast, so that they up into Harlem, into New York, so that they could do whatever. And at the time, they oftentimes took work making less money than their white counterparts, but this allowed them to participate in the economy and earn and to make their own independent wealth. And eventually they created their Black Wall Street that was, a bunch of banks, right? They had banks. They were on their way to being financially free. And that's when I think racism took an ugly turn again. And then the systemic racism, the real systemic racism, like redlining and burning these people out of their banking system and whatnot, that was a real thing. And then the Jim Crow laws eventually took root, and the opposition to the Civil Rights Act and all of the stuff that the Democrats pioneered, honestly, at that time, the Dixiecrats in particular, were these are all important facets of our history that I think they go underrepresented from the national discourse. So thank you for making that contribution, Ron. I appreciate it. We're going to get to the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Lots of calls. I love it. Where do we go here? We're going to take a break, but we're going to go to Michigan, then we're going to go to Maine, and we got Ohio, Idaho. Keep them coming. Looking forward to speaking with you. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go to Sandpoint, Idaho, KSPT. Check in with Dustin. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hello. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Thank God.
I love the show. I have been on one other time talking about head injuries, but I just wanted to make people across the country aware that a lot of people that are not expecting an opiate to be in the substance that they're getting, like, an upper, like cocaine, whatever, they're not expecting it, so they don't even test for it.
Right.
And then
and this, it's interesting, Dustin. I have an acquaintance. I can't quite call him a colleague, but he's in this industry. And I remember speaking to him a little bit offline, and then he did a very public interview about this, about his own son deciding to try Xanax for the first time at a party. And we only know this because he went to the party with his girlfriend, and he told his girlfriend, I took a Xanax. And moments later, he was on the floor, passed out, and he died, 19 years old. He was, I think, second semester of freshman year, or maybe sophomore year. And it was very unfortunate. And it was because he thought he was doing a legitimate Xanax pill, buying a downer. And, of course, you would think that you would feel more relaxed, but you didn't think you would die from the fentanyl. And you're right. Even cocaine, which you're expecting to buy an upper, and that has fentanyl in it sometimes, which is also killing people. And this is why we had Derek Maltz on one time, former DEA supervisor, who said that we've got to redefine this as fentanyl poisoning. because people aren't expecting this stuff. So you can't really call it an overdose because they weren't intending to ingest that substance to begin with. So good point, Dustin. Thank you for the call and for your kind words. I appreciate it. Let's go to John, Portland, Maine, WLOB. John, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hi, Rich. Thanks so much. Is this Rich Little or Rich Valdez?
I wish I could do impressions like Rich Little. He's terrific.
It was great, man. I'm just calling because I haven't, Rich. You probably let me get to all the points. I understand, but I haven't heard anybody say this. Either anyone I know or anyone like on the air or anything. I'm just surprised that it just occurred to me lately that with all the security in the White House, today they just cracked a murder from a 12-year-old pizza crust, right, and arrested this guy.
Right, in Long Island. You're right.
I don't understand how with all the security in the White House in restricted areas after a week and a half that they're saying they don't. I think the country mostly thinks there's definitely some kind of a cover. But what I haven't heard anyone say that, who has access to such a secure area? His party I think, is trying to find some way to ease him out from running this time.
I think you're right, John. You're right. They're trying to push him out, saying, you know what, you've reached your expiration date. And I didn't quite say that, but I did say they can't blame this on Trump because there's no Trump in the White House right now. There's no Republicans in the White House. This has to be somebody inside. My money, if I had to put it on anybody, would have been Kamala Harris or her people or her surrogates wanting Joe to look bad and for her to kind of emerge as the hero, the white knight, if you will. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not. John in Portland, Maine, thank you for the call. WLOB, much appreciated. Let us continue. Let us go. Where do we go from here? There was another one I wanted to go to. That's right on this topic. Let's see. Yeah, we could do it. Paul in Ohio, WSOY. Paul, what's up, my man? How are you?
Hey, good evening, Rich. I'm good. Hey, I do remember the hustle. I'm actually a child of the 70s, and it was kind of like a line dance of today that you've seen people do, hopping and bopping back. I remember that very well. And but
now it came out of the South Bronx.
Oh, really? Who done it? I don't remember who done it. Who did the song?
I don't remember who did the song. I don't.
Yeah, but anyway, okay. There was this other song called "Cocaine." It was by Eric Clapton. Okay, and I believe that was in the 80s. And
is this what they play in the White House when you come into that cubby area?
Well, apparently for Kamala Harris, because I believe that's who is the culprit here.
Yeah.
Because have you ever watched that woman? Now, Rich, I have to ask you: have you ever been around anybody that's done cocaine? Because
I have, but I didn't know at the time. Like, people told me, they're like, how could you not notice? This guy was moving his jaw funny and talking fast. And I was like, I don't know. I thought he had coffee or something. I'm so oblivious to things like that at times. But my friends who, are a lot more cultured in the streets than I am, were pointing things out to me. I've been around them, but I never noticed as it was happening.
Yeah, well, I'm about to be 59 years old, and I've seen quite a bit growing up in the late 60s, 70s, 80s. But, the drugs are a lot stronger now. The fentanyl, that's ridiculous. Referring back to that man that just called, I had a niece pass away not too long ago from fentanyl. Thought it was Xanax, but, I guess things happen. But anyway, wasn't that right up the vice presidential entrance or something there? And if you've seen the way this girl acts, we used to call that tea. It wasn't cocaine, it was tea before it was cocaine or crack or anything like that. And I don't know how many people know that. But, so I've been around quite a while, and I just think that Kamala Harris might be the one. I mean, I don't know if Hunter, if he's smart enough or stupid enough.
I agree with you on that one. I think that I think you're spot on here. I think if anything, it came from Kamala Harris or her camp or, somebody rooting for her. I don't think it had anything to do with Hunter, because besides Hunter, in all of those videos, and there's so many of those videos, he was always doing crack cocaine and methamphetamine. It was never cocaine. So I wouldn't even look to Hunter, honestly. I mean, you make a joke or two, but of course that would end there. Thank you, Paul, in Zanesville, Ohio, WSOY. Big shout out to you and everybody out there. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go to Akron, Ohio, WINR. Frank, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hey, it's an honor, and I'm an older man and a two-tour war vet. But
thank you for your service. The honor's mine.
So what we have to do, if we look whether it's in Russia or whether it's in other countries or our own country, the division and the confusion and the division. And we have to stop and look every day in our own personal lives. I don't care whether you're a Christian believer or Islamic, or if you're a communist, your God is communist. But in the wars that are going on around the world and all the fires and all the confusions and all the distrust, we have to look at it, stop and look at it each day as spiritual warfare against the powers of darkness.
Yeah. I think you're so spot on there, Frank. It ultimately is a battle between good and evil, and each and every one of us play a part in it. And I'm guilty of that, but this is why I try my best to be respectful of the other side and try to have a discussion that's always focused really on trying to get to a better part of life, right? All of us need to be, I think, spiritually enlightened and just do better. And starting with me, quite frankly. And it's a good point that you bring up, because the communists, they specialize in this divide and conquer. And the more that they could spread the notion of atheism or agnosticism or just, being a deist and eliminating God from the public discourse, the easier it is for them to get people to worship at the altar of their big government. And that's why I do what I do, right? Got to be out here fighting each and every day, because if we're not doing it, who will? Anyway, thanks for the call, Frank. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless. I am Rich Valdez. Let's do it again on Monday.